through a ketubah, through marriage. We accepted his offer of blood. We accepted that offer, and through that, we have given ourselves to him. The center of Christianity is Jesus. Undoubtedly, most of the world knows him as Jesus. We know him as Yeshua. Now, I once saw a scene from a movie, and this movie is not a Christian movie by any means. A friend of mine said, "You've got to see this." So when I looked it up on YouTube, and it's a scene with a family sitting at a dinner table. And the mother asked the father to say grace. And he begins to say grace by saying, "Cute and cuddly baby Jesus, with your golden fleece diaper all ominous." His wife interrupts him and says, "Wait, no, wait a minute. Jesus was a man. He wasn't just a baby." And the father then tells the mother, "Well, I like the baby Jesus better because that's the Christmas Jesus, and that's the one I like the most." His friend then comes in and says, "I like to think of Jesus wearing a tuxedo t-shirt saying, 'I'm formal, yet I'm here to party.'" And then his son turns around and says, "I like my Jesus to be a ninja." We can't create Jesus or Yeshua into whoever we want him to be. He is who he is. There is no doubt in that. We can't just say, "I want him to be this," just to fit the way I want to live my life. I watch, we have internet TV. We don't watch regular TV. We can pick and choose what we watch and what our kids watch. Now, the internet TV has started to play commercials. To pay for it being free, they need commercials the same as television. And but the great thing about internet TV is you can, if a commercial comes up that you don't like, you can tell it you don't like that commercial and don't want to see it again, and it'll never show that commercial again. But there is one commercial that comes on that I'm quite fond of, and it's Geico. I love the little Geico lizard. But Geico has these other commercials that does a woodchuck chuck wood, or my favorite is the pen mightier than a sword? Right. Now, this is hilarious because it fits right in with the ninja. But this guy jumps out there and he's wearing his black ninja suit and he's doing all his ninja stuff and his moves, and he's got this sword and he's going all over the place with his sword. And it shows this other guy, and he's standing there with a UPS driver. And the UPS driver hands him a pen and he signs, and UPS driver hands him a box, and he opens the box and shoots him with a taser. A taser beats sword, I guess. But to me, the reason I mention that is Jesus is that to me. Yeshua is that to me. Yeshua is smarter than any man with a sword. Yeshua is better than a ninja. Yeshua signed his name and said, "You are mine, and I will protect you for as long as you live. I will cover you and protect you." That's who I want my Yeshua to be. Many people want a comic book hero to come and swoop them up and save their lives. I would much rather have Yeshua. I would much rather have him because he's going to save me for eternity. I don't care what happens here. He doesn't care what happens here, really. He cares about the hearts and the souls of men. He wants our love. He wants us to give him our all, just like he did. We saw it in the video. His life wasn't compiled of all kinds of different random acts. Every act that he did in his life that's noted in the scriptures was pointing to the end, where he would shed his own blood, he would die on the cross, and then 3 days later would be resurrected again in his glorified body so that we can spend eternity with him. But have we created Jesus into something else? The world is trying to change him. The world wants him to be something else. We see it with different denominations. They change who he is. But when it all comes right back to the grassroots of everything, he lived a life of the Messiah. Perfect. A lamb perfect. He shed his blood for the remission of sins so we all could be saved. Bottom line. That's my Yeshua. That's the Jesus I called upon. That's my Yeshua. If you would, turn with me to John chapter 10. Now here, this is the parable of the Good Shepherd. And in chapter 10, starting in verse 7, it says, "So Yeshua said to them, 'Truly, truly, I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. All who came before me were thieves and robbers, but the sheep do not listen to them. I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved and will go in and out and find pasture.'" He goes on to say that my sheep know my voice. There is no mistaking his voice. He is that still, small voice. That voice when I was very worldly. My grandfather was a preacher. I was destined for this, even when I was wild. My grandfather prayed me in. I was destined to do what I'm doing today. Even though I lived a wild life, I was still supposed to be doing this. And when I was doing bad things, there was always a voice in the back of my head that said, "Don't do that." How many of you have experienced that? That "don't do that" voice. And every time you'd hear the "don't do that" voice, sometimes it sounded like my mother. But that "don't do that" voice, every time you didn't listen to the "don't do that" voice, you got yourself in trouble. Every time, beyond a shadow of a doubt. And then you always got, and I know this was my mother, "I told you so." Anybody have that one? Yeah. This week, we were supposed to have a protest. And I don't know how many of you are aware of this. Charlie Daniels was in concert. And Westboro Baptist Church has vowed to follow Charlie Daniels everywhere he goes and protest his concerts. Now, this is the same group who will protest military funerals. Why in the world would those who protest military funerals want to come to the veteran capital of the world? Branson, the slogan of Branson is "honoring our veterans every day." And you're going to come into here. I guess they thought better of it, finding out what Branson was, because they didn't show up. But I have found out that they promised to show up certain places, and then are no-shows. When they vow to be in this place, and then they don't show up. Now, the way I see that is when God raises up a standard against the enemy, he flees. If they were so grounded in what they wanted to get across, then they'd show up everywhere they said. But when Christians, believers, begin to pray against them, the first guy was on Facebook and he said, "I'm not going to allow that." There's a sidewalk. I don't know if you know much about road right-of-way, but over by the theater where Charlie Daniels was playing, the right-of-way is the sidewalk. I mean, that is it. There is no more room there for building another road. And there were people there. Charlie Daniels went on at 7 o'clock. There were people there at 4 o'clock that were lined around the block, blocking the sidewalk from Westboro Baptist Church ever coming in. Yes, give God the praise for it, because that was God raising up a standard against them so they could not do what they were doing. Had nothing to do with Charlie Daniels. Had to do with the wrong that they're spreading. They started out holding up signs across the street from Jewish yeshivas where little Jewish children were walking out of school holding signs calling them murderers. teaching their children to do the same thing. It's no different than the terrorists. They're spiritual terrorists as far as I'm concerned. Their bigotry and their hatred is a cancer to Christianity. Think about it. How many people are out there who are not believers, who are watching Fox, CNN, all these other broadcasts of these people protesting, thinking, that's what a Christian is? That's what it means to be a Christian? Hatred? Bigotry? I don't want none of that. I don't want to be a part of that. In Deuteronomy 29, verse 18, starting in verse 18, says, "Beware lest there be among you a man or a woman or a clan or a tribe whose heart is turning away today from the Lord your God to go and serve the gods of those nations. Beware lest there be among you a root bearing poisonous and bitter fruit. One who then hears the word of his sworn covenant, blesses himself in his heart, saying, I shall be safe, though I walk in stubbornness of my heart. This will lead to the sweeping away of the moist and the dry alike. The Lord will not be willing to forgive him, but rather the anger of the Lord and his jealousy will smoke against the man, and the curses written in the book will settle upon him, and the Lord will blot out his name from under heaven." Those are huge, strong words from God. That is why we have to have the Torah as our foundation. If we don't have the Torah as our foundation, then we lose contact with his identity. He can become anything that the world wants him to become, but the Torah says this is who he is, this is who he was, this is who he is always going to be, and he's never going to stray from that. That is the purpose of the foundation upon the rock. We have to paint that picture of Yeshua for the world to see. Like I said before, he doesn't care about the stuff of this world. His concern is the hearts and the souls of men. Point blank. Leviticus 19:19 talks about the mixing of seed. I kind of see that as mixing words. A poison, like Westboro Baptist Church. A poisonous seed like that. Or the poison of traditions of men. Or poison like murderous words. We need to be mindful of what we're saying. We need to be mindful who we're around when we stumble. We need to look out into the fields and see a field like what Boaz would have looked at as he looked out his back window or his back door. Boaz was so good at what he did as far as planting that he had people who would come from all around and glean from his fields. Without his field, would he have ever met Ruth? That field is what brought Ruth to Boaz. Ruth and Boaz is what brought about the lineage of David, which then led to the Messiah. That good fruit, that good reputation, that light. That's what we need to be in the world today. A light in the darkness. Now, when I was in the Marine Corps,